So we had our first opportunity to use our propane generator. This past weekend we had a significant storm, and we had 51 centimeters of snow, and then afterwards we had some rain which made it almost like freezing slush. We had winds of upwards of 110 kilometers an hour. And on top of that, here where we live, we had a power outage of 31 hours in January, which wasn't very pretty. So we had a chance to use our generator. It was very easy to set up. I have it stored over there underneath my desk, so I just wheeled it out, hooked up a propane cylinder, primed it using this little button here, and went to start it. Now, one thing I did notice is that I had these little tiny short bolts, carriage bolts, that I was going to, I keep it not hooked up to the battery when it's used in storage. So I was going to use these bolts to bolt them on. But they're too short and it's very hard to wrestle with cold fingers. So I went and purchased these longer bolts with wing nuts, so it'll be much easier to mount up. So needless to say, I didn't use the electric start. What I did use was my pull cord. And again, 3 pulls and it was running just fine. We used the 240 volt 30 amp plug on this unit to power some stuff in the house. We powered both 120 and 240 volt appliances. Now, for those of you who are not quite sure, well, a 120 volt is basically anything that'll plug into a regular outlet in the house. Outlets very similar to this type here. And everything else is 240 volt. Like we have everything electric in our house, so anything like the hot water boiler, our pump, a stove, your dryer, and our electric heat. This generator has, well, I believe it's 21 amps at 240 volts or 42 amps at 120. And we had it running basically at, I say, 3/4 to full capacity at times. We actually tripped a breaker once because we had a little bit too much on, so we turned off a couple of lights and it ran perfectly fine. We had running in the house at different combinations. We had heat, our fridge, our 2 deep freezes, our stove, lights, and our pump. So it all ran off the generator. A couple of things that I did notice is that number one, it said for running time I think is roughly 8 hours. Well, we got 6.5 hours. I just jotted this down. Yeah, about 6.5 hours on one 20-pound propane cylinder, one barbecue tank worth of fuel. And we, like I said, we were running at probably about 3/4 of the power. Another thing that I noticed is that it actually shut off sometime during the night. I was awake at the time, and I came out, and the actual propane tank, this is the one that we used, there was condensation, like frozen from here down on the outside, all like frost, and it wouldn't run. I didn't think there's anything to worry about, and no, it isn't. It is. It can happen with propane cylinders when the propane is being used. It'll freeze up, and just so happens that when that happens, the propane will not flow. So what I did is I just hooked it up to another propane bottle and used that one while the frost dissipated off of this, and then it worked fine. And so this one is practically empty. There might be a little bit of propane into it, but not much. Another thing that I noticed as well, and a little tip for you folks, is that when you hook up a propane cylinder, it's best to open this valve slowly. Just crack it a little bit, and you can actually hear the propane hissing through the hose, and the hose will vibrate a little tiny bit. What I initially did is I put it on and tightened it up, and I opened it up quickly and then primed it, and it primed for like maybe 2 seconds, and then when I start it would run for like a moment, like happened in, I guess, my initial video on this, which I'll link below. It wouldn't run, and it's because there is a sensitive valve inside this, so that let's say if this hose was cut and this valve was on, based on the volume of propane running through it, this valve will shut off. So what you have to do is turn this on just a little crack, and just let the propane fill the hose, and then you can turn it on all the ways. So that's a little tip for you using the cylinders. Another thing that I noticed is that, where are the handles? These here, the carrying handles. With the engine vibrating, they actually move out the full length. And that's not a big deal, but where I had it in my garage, see those two black marks? That's where the ends actually rubbed. So that's not a big concern, but it's just something that I noticed. And other than that, I'm quite impressed with the generator. Oh, when we did trip breaker, all I had to do was come out. Well, I turned off some lights, and this is the 240 volt breaker. It flipped down in the off position, so I just flicked it back on, and away we went. So that's it. I'm pretty impressed with this. It did what I was supposed to do. In the down bar below, I will also put a link to my wife's blog of that particular day, Colorful Canary, showing what we did during the day. Well, a day and a half, 31 hours without power. So that's it, our initial first run with the all-power 6,000 watt generator. I'm pretty impressed. So everyone, thanks for watching.